Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you wherever in this amazing country of New Zealand this session of Solid Ground finds you. So I'm excited to be back. It's another week. I can't believe that we're pretty much now in the middle of July. I don't know where the year has gone. I'm still reminded of Rachel, my wife's, insight. The days are long, but the years go quickly, and I have to say that's often how it feels. But look, good morning to you all, and particularly to new viewers, both here and overseas. Solid Ground is where I sit down for the next 20 minutes or so and discuss topics of interest in the political, the cultural, the social, the religious space that have caught my eye. And as the name suggests, from a solid ground of good philosophy, good theology, good insights and ethics. Really importantly, as regulars know, this is live, the show is live. And so if you're on the Family First Facebook page or its YouTube channel, your comments will come live to me here in the studio. If you're on LinkedIn or you're on X or on my Facebook page, lovely to have you. You are very much part of the show. But if you want your comments to come to me immediately, jump on, as I say, to Family First YouTube channel and Facebook page. And then you can do things like this, like lovely Rosie, good morning. And Nigel, lovely to have you along as well. I know you've said good morning to Bob, and then you've seen we've done a swap, so to speak. Good morning to Lynette, lovely to have you along. Edmund, lovely to have you as well. I didn't know I had a knighthood, but I'm delighted regardless. Michael as well, lovely to have you here. Chris, I'm pleased to know things are going. Whoops, I've clicked the wrong button again. I'm too quick down there in Napier. As I keep saying, I've really got to go and visit at some point. It's been quite a while. And to Gordon, good morning. So I can see from my system actually a neat array of people coming both through the YouTube and the Facebook channels. Look, if there's thoughts and questions you have on anything I'm discussing today, put them in. If you've got a question about something else happening in and around New Zealand or around the world that you'd like me to pass some comment on, more than happy to try and do so. I say try, not because there are topics I won't get into. It's just, well, it can be sometimes a bit of a challenge to keep up with all the comments flowing beside me, and of course talking to you all here on camera. But I will just acknowledge one person who's been in the comments actually emailed me the other day to be talking around some of actually the local government dynamics which are coming up soon. So I'm not going to address that this morning, but as we get closer to our local government elections, so that's electing councillors and mayors, there's a few thoughts to be had, and in fact that's just around the just around the corner. And Darren, lovely to have you along. Good morning. Guys, there's no shortage of topics as always. So why don't we just leap straight into it? But as we're preparing to do so, just a reminder here at Family First, you're able to access all our materials through our website. You can watch all of this, of course, on social media. YouTube's a very popular channel. We're now writing a lot more, so you'll see a lot more articles going up on the website. We've just had some around magic mushrooms, for example. In fact, tragically, there's been a death. I think I only saw the headline and briefly this morning. A death, or someone's ended up quite seriously injured after being far too high on magic mushrooms or psychedelics. I only mention that because there's just this ongoing push. In fact, I've just drafted, I'm not sure it's published yet, I've just drafted a read article on this very topic, because you're just getting that reporting coming through mainstream New Zealand media about how wonderful magic mushrooms are. But of course, there's a lot of harm that comes with these as well. So anyway, good morning there to Tangipa. I possibly said that wrong, and I apologise if I have. But good morning, lovely to have you along. But as I was saying, you can read and you can listen. We now are on the likes of Spotify, so you can hear us there. Hey, look, and Jack, I can't not say to Jackie and Itihi, lovely to have you along. Jackie, good morning. So this is St. Mary's Church in Avondale as of yesterday morning, or about 2-3 in the morning. Actually, it's a Catholic church. I know it relatively well. I know the parish priest there quite well. He and I trained together many years ago. Why I'm putting this up is not just the tragedy of the fire. As the bishop here in Auckland had noted, the church is a place of great memory. So it's not the physical bricks and mortar itself, but many of you with your own churches or marae or whatever, it's a place of connection. You have very fond memories. It might have been where you were married, where you farewelled loved ones at funerals, baptisms, confirmations, and so on. So quite tragic and sad. Likely arson, which is probably why I'm mentioning in this, and I've touched on this before, because you'll know I've talked about the fire in New Brighton and Masterton. But likely, I want to underline that it's quite possible that it's not, but the early indications coming from the fire investigators and police that this is likely an arson. So tragic in itself. But why I mention it is it's more something to keep an eye on for all of us, because I suspect in reporting over the coming days when the news comes out confirming that it's arson, there will be no discussion of this being a hate crime or otherwise. It will be a relatively soft sell on what has happened. Now, as you all know, I'm not a great fan of people running around crying hate crime or hate speech, but I am a great believer in consistency. And why I'm mentioning this is, of course, last week we were talking about this fire in New Brighton. Again, another church was targeted. No discussion of this being a hate crime in any way, shape or form. And you remember earlier in the year, 7 churches in Masterton were attacked. I believe it was 7. I'm happy to be corrected on that. I think it was 7. I don't know, I'm getting confused. I was reading something last night. It could have been 4 churches, but there were 7 charges. But the point being, we've had in the last year now multiple churches attacked, and I don't recall in any of the reporting of these being hate crimes. But as we know, and I can see some comments rolling in, had these been other places of worship, probably not synagogues, because actually the media don't like talking about hate crimes to do with synagogues. But if a temple, a mosque, a marae was attacked, as I've referenced before, a building to do with LGBTIQ+, as it was in Tauranga, hate crime is very quickly attributed and screamed loudly from the pulpit, if you will, paradoxically, of mainstream media. And I think that's the key point I wanted to get across to people today. We continue to have, if you will, 2 tiers of reporting. If this building on fire was anything other than a church, or I might add a synagogue, it would be called a hate crime. But because this is directed towards Christians, Christian places of worship, it goes quietly and under the radar, often with a whole panoply or a whole fleet of excuses. And as I say, we can easily push back and look at other, as in push back in time, and look at other examples. As I mentioned, you've got New Brighton, and you've got what happened in Masterton. And look, I agree with Peter here. It's what I say. I'm not a great fan of running around calling everything a hate crime. I think by its nature, a criminal act comes with a negative intention. And so I'm not a great fan of calling things hate crime, just as, someone who disagrees with someone getting called a hate speech purveyor. I'm not a great fan of it. But my point, and I think Peter's right to note it's already a crime as an arson. The point being it's the inconsistency of reporting. Again, as others are noting here. Had this been another place of worship, another religious tradition or traditions, this would be very, very quickly labelled a hate crime. There would be commentary on that. The journalists themselves, the reporters, I'm sure spokespeople would be very quickly saying hate crime. But when it comes to a Christian church, it is not to be discussed. Somehow, burning down of churches is not seen as a problematic act in the same way it is for other groups. So, as DD, I think, has picked up on what I'm saying, or I'm picking up on what he's just said, or she. Sorry, I always make presumptions of who people are in behind. Apologies. But DD said, be consistent, and I think that's the key point. So that's a problem. And as also pointed out, you paint over a rainbow crossing, and again, huge uproar and outroar. And at one level, so there should be from my perspective. I'm not really into attacking, desecrating, damaging things. It's not my way of operating. Sonny's asking about medical data of Barry Young. I have to admit, Sonny, I don't know who Barry Young is. So after the show, I'm going to have to jump online and have a look. So apologies that I can't answer that one. Darren's right. Yeah, there are a lot. Is it a trend in New Zealand yet? I don't know. We've certainly seen a lot in Canada. which was whipped up around graves of young people which never existed. But there's a bit of a problem in play at the moment around particular religious traditions. As I say, burn a Christian church, it'll get reported. Burn down another place of worship, oh boy, wall-to-wall coverage. So anyway, we just need to be aware of that. Jackie's noting a good point here. So I was just having a look. Why do arson light? Because it's something will give them the notoriety. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm no expert in the psychology of arsonists, but often there is either a crave for attention. In some cases, and it never justifies it, in some cases they're literally taking out their anger and frustration, as I say. In Canada, there were reports, let's say 5 years ago, it might have been less, that the remains of babies were being found in churchyards. It was around the whole time when nuns and so forth used to look after young kids, the adoptive agencies and so forth. Huge uproar. Turned out there wasn't any evidence, as I recall it, and yet God knows how many churches were burnt to the ground. And an excellent comment here, it is the double standards. I mean, you guys are far better than me. You're much more succinct. I'm verbose. I just need to talk around in circles. I just thought that was interesting. And I did want to jump back to another story as well from not last week, but the week before. You might remember this is Tamitha Paul. She's a Green MP who was very keen and remains very keen to rip down all colonial monuments. So statues to Queen Victoria, rotundas to colonial figures and so forth. People who cooperatively helped build this country to what it is. And why I'm mentioning this is because at the time I said, look, she and her activist and radical friends will support this. But the removal of colonial statues is just the first step. In fact, I said on Political Playback, so that's something that Bob and I do on a Thursday night, that actually eventually they will want to remove people from this country that they don't believe fits their view of an ethno-state or whatever we want to call it. I think that's a fairly popular phrase at the moment. But why I wanted to mention it, and I want to be really clear as I put this up, there is no known link between her calls and the attack of these graves. I want to really underline that to people. But why I'm putting these together is actually it's a natural extension or a tangent from that sort of thinking. So again, to really reiterate, there is no suggestion that Tamitha and the Green Party are calling on people to damage historic graves. But the thinking and the logic is the same. It's connected. So in calling for the removal of elements of history, you have to ask yourself, as I am, the question of, at what point do people say, well, actually, we're going to desecrate Christian graveyards, Christian churches, because actually these are colonial as well. These are impositions on our pagan past. And as I say, the logical conclusion is eventually you have to remove people who are deemed colonial. So, it makes it a bit difficult because I'm sure the Tamitha Pauls end up waking in the morning working out which side are they on, because of course she, like everybody here in this country, is a wonderful blend of cultures. Does she oppress herself or does she free herself? Who knows? But I just wanted to raise that. Again, want to keep stressing because I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. It is not saying that the calls are directly related, but the thinking is. And I think it's just, most unfortunate. And look, Peter's got a really good point here. It's linked more to the Maori Party, not the Green Party. But for 2 years now, they have not, and this is more of a political point. It's more of a political point. But the Maori Party have not submitted their financial reports to the Electoral Commission for 2 years now. And so every MP, every candidate, every political party after each election has to hand in its finances. And I used to have to do that after every election just as an MP. You literally, and I did, kept track of every cent that came in and from who, and every cent that went out. National Party does it, Labour Party does it, the Greens, everybody does it. It's actually a key part of transparency. But for 2 years now, and thank you to Peter for raising this, for 2 years now, the Maori Party have not submitted. And look, that is a huge red flag. And I don't mean the Tino Rangatira flag. It's a massive red flag around what's going on in the Maori Party. And there's really only one of two explanations. One is they are hiding things. Now, I don't have direct evidence of that, but it's a fairly common assumption that people would make. If you're not prepared to table your finances, you're hiding something. The other is equally as problematic, and that's just an arrogance of the highest order. And you've seen hints of this from comments from John Tamahere and the Te Pāti Māori leaders. They believe that they're above this reporting. They are far too important, far too activist to have to bend down to colonial ideas as they would perceive it, of actually handing in accounts and being responsible. Personally, I think it's probably a mixture of both, but something has to be done here. We cannot have political parties in this country running amok, potentially acting illegally, and by their very actions and their arrogance undermining our democracy. It's exceptionally dangerous. But look, this is a hint of what the world looks like when you get far left radical Marxist groups like Te Pāti Māori. Okay, we've seen this in the histories of various communist regimes. In fact, you can put the mad regimes on the right, the extreme right-wing parties in this place too. They think they're above the law. They'll impose lots of duties, costs and taxes on everyone else, but they'll exempt themselves. And you can't help but feel that the Maori Party really do want to sit as their own sort of kings and queens, doing nothing all day and lording it over everybody else. It's a real problem, and I don't know exactly what the options are here. It probably takes the police to step in and actually investigate them now. Why are they not handing them over? As I say, a mixture of arrogance and probably hiding something as well. I mean, you all know yourselves, if you don't put your tax returns in, you're in big, big trouble. So, yeah, anyway, I'm just seeing some of the comments here. So Rosie's, not very good comment there in total. Oh yes, I see. There's so many comments coming, I've lost track of them. But look, major problem. So to Peter, thank you for raising that one. Now I've lost my track of thought, which is not in itself a bad thing. Where am I going? Oh yes, this caught my eye too. And again, it's a far more political point. This is Chloe Throwback of the Green Party. I seem to be picking on them this morning. Come on Thursday night, Bob and I will pick on all the political parties. But what I thought about this is, I'm not going to get into the depths of tax policy, but she's pushing her economic plans, which includes major tax increases on those she deems rich. And I hope you can read this, but this is something I wanted to call out because I just see this as blatant lies. And it's one of the reasons we do the likes of Solid Ground or Political Playback, Bob doing Daybreak, is just to put a different light on what you're reading through mainstream media. I mean, most of you will get this already, but there's just so much untruths being spouted out there that it needs to be called out and sunlight put on it. So first and foremost, when you get the likes of Chloe Throwback and a lot of the others on the far left screaming about taxing the rich, I mean, that's fine, they're allowed to do so, but you always have to ask yourself, well, who do they deem to be rich? But secondly, you've got to call out their lies and ask where their facts are coming from. So she's suggesting here that some of the hardest working New Zealanders that she's met are single mums working multiple jobs. So far, so good. But then she says they are often paying more tax than millionaires and billionaires. I just don't know how she can make that statement with a straight face. Now, obviously, in absolute terms, that just can't be true, as in a millionaire's objectively going to be paying physically more money. She possibly would try to argue a percentage, but that again makes no sense here in New Zealand. And in fact, it's pretty much an outright lie, because if you are a single mum working multiple jobs and you have children, which I suppose why you're a single mum, your effective tax rate will be quite low. And then Chloe is deliberately ignoring, I suspect, the likes of working for families. And I've talked about this before, and I know it's a very political point, but it's something which we have to really stress if we're going to be able to talk freely and frankly around tax policy, is that a lot of New Zealanders on working for families, if you're a family of two on about $50,000 to $60,000 a year, you effectively end up paying no tax. In other words, you just keep that $50,000, $60,000. Because what happens, and Chloe's ignoring all of this, you might literally pay tax, it goes into the IRD, but then all of it comes back through working for families. It's incredibly inefficient. But why I'm stressing it is this is the elements that politicians, and it goes right across the board, left and right, but it very much comes through the likes of the Greens. These are elements they will not tell you. So something like working for families, the various benefits on the side, accommodation allowances, so on and so forth. Probably a mum like this would be in a state house again. Benefits on top of benefits. I just think it's an outright lie to try and suggest that someone like this hardworking mum is paying more tax than most other people. I just think it doesn't stand to reason. And just to illustrate the working for families point, if you're someone who can take $50,000 to $60,000 home net, in other words, after all the costs are coming out, that means you'd probably be needing to earn between $80,000 and $90,000 gross. In other words, someone who earns $90,000 and is being taxed, does not have access to likes of working for families and so forth, would end up with about $50,000 to $60,000 cash in the hand. That's the point. And so you can be on a fairly low income in this country. Now, we don't want that. Ideally, we want people on higher incomes, but I think it's quite false to say, well, if you're on a low income, you are being taxed more, because basically you don't pay any tax. Working for families returns it all. So anyway, just a small point. And the last thing I thought I would share, just as a matter of inconsistency, if not hypocrisy, I think this was on the weekend. I hope I have that right. I don't even know who this person is. I had to look it up. Catalan Vahaakalo, I think. No idea. But I believe she's a black fern. Good for her. But there she is on her hand. I think it says land back. Now, I assume this is again some Maori activism, although I think she might be Tongan, which if she is as well, she might want to go and look at Tongan history of invasion throughout the Pacific. I lived in Fiji for a number of years, and many stories were told about the Tongans attempting to invade. In fact, where I stay, there's a shrine for where actually the Fijians pushed the Tongans back. So anyway, Catalan might want to learn her Tongan history before she starts running about like this. But I'm not wanting to weigh into the ethnic side. I don't want to into the treaty side. I think you'll anticipate where I'm going with this. This is another double standard or blatant hypocrisy that exists within our sporting culture here in New Zealand. Because you all know the situations with the likes of Israel Folau, who was censored for holding views. You'll know of other sports players who don't want to, for example, wear pride armbands, or they might actually want to wear something that says, I love Jesus, or Jesus loves you, or whatever. There are others, of course, in the more controversial spaces at the moment wanting to support Israel, those wanting to support Palestine, and have been told they're not to be able to wear those things. And yet we have this situation again and again, and we've had it before. Remember, there was, I think it was at a Wellington women's rugby team, again making major political statements around the nature of the treaty. That's all fine. That's the double standard that we're talking about here. And New Zealand sport has a problem, actually, because it does not seem to be able to control or censor these people, which might sound like a strange word coming from me, but I'm all here for consistency. Like, if we're allowing people to make political statements, in this case around treaty claims, then why is someone not able to make a statement around international affairs? Why are people not allowed to make statements of faith and anything else that they care to? So it's an arrogance of the highest order by this woman to think that she is above her team and she can just go around, again, I think making quite inane statements. But at the same time, it's a double standard. It's a double standard. And, sport in New Zealand has to address this. It's the old thing, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So keep that in mind. I hope none of you end up in this situation, but if you or your friends are finding that a sports team is saying that you can't express your political views or your religious views, just remember the Black Ferns and other women's rugby players, obviously we had it with the All Blacks in general, will force their particular woke views, their far left views, into their sporting activities. And that's just allowed, tolerated, ignored. There's no consequences. But if you are like Israel Folau or Maria Folau, and you want to express your views, that is not to be tolerated at all. So we have this glaring double standard existing in New Zealand sport. And what it ultimately shows is not just some of the players, but those in charge are politically biased, prejudiced, and compromised. They are more than happy to allow views that they are sympathetic with or afraid to counter to happen. But if you're expressing views, particularly Christian views or conservative views, you're sympathising with the groups that the progressives don't like, so think of Israel, for example, then they're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. Which is a great segue for me to remind you of the Forum on the Family, because of course we are talking to Israel and Maria Folau. It'll be their first public interview on their side of the story. And just remember, Israel expressed his Christian views, and his sporting career was basically destroyed within Australia, and their names dragged through the mud. And yet this nobody, effectively, and I'm sorry to say, but I've got no idea who she was until someone sent me the image, gets away with being able to push her political views in public with basically no consequence. So come and hear from Israel and Maria. It's going to be a recorded interview, as Bob has been at pains to point out why they were invited and were keen to come to join us here in Auckland in just over a month's time. He's also, as in Israel, is balancing his rugby career, and he's going to be in Japan. So that will be a recorded interview, which in itself will still be amazing. Last couple of things. Obviously, I'm on RCR. That's Reality Check Radio. If you want to go and have a chat where you can have a chat, but various interviews. Last one was with the Human Rights Commissioner. A reminder that Bob and I both do our Substack, so substack.com. You can look up our names and you can see things that we are writing there, which is fantastic. Of course, we always have our morning shows, 7:30 every morning. I think, I could be wrong on this, keep an eye on socials. Bob might be taking a break tomorrow, but you'll soon find out whether or not daybreak starts or not. And of course, political playback on Fridays at 5. So guys, it's been marvellous. I'm just putting up some comments here as we wrap up, because I'm conscious 8 o'clock's here. You'd expect, this is coming back to the sports, that someone would be, but they're not going to. They're not going to. And Peter's right, freedom of speech, well, I wouldn't say it's an absolute, it's a near absolute. I think it's a very important foundation, but I think the point, and I hope, and I'm not to be presumptuous with Peter, but it's got to be consistent. If we're going to say people are free to express their political views in sport, like that young woman did around land back, then others should be allowed to put whatever they want on their hands or armbands and on their shoelaces or whatever. But of course, that's the point. And Peter's saying he's defending the right. Yeah, and that's the point. That's the key point here, that we can defend her right to do this, but New Zealand sport will not defend the right of others to say what they want. You know, put Jesus loves you on your hand, or I believe in this, or I believe in that, or happy birthday to the Dalai Lama. Whatever you want to think, we all know collectively, there is not a chance that New Zealand sports, that the Black Ferns or the All Blacks or any of the groups would tolerate that. And we can say that with absolute certainty, can't we, people? Because we know exactly what's happened. In fact, as a quick heads up, I'm about to do an interview out of the UK in the next few days with a lawyer representing a number of sports people who have refused to put things on like pride armbands, shoelaces and other symbols. They've refused to do it and have been terribly harassed. And so this lawyer is actually doing a freedom of speech type approach. So I'm sitting down to interview him in the coming days and look very much forward to engaging with that conversation and sharing it with you. Guys, I better away. It is almost 8 o'clock. In fact, it is 8 o'clock. It has been lovely to have you with me here. I look forward to seeing you all again on Thursday morning.